Now, we've looked at this radio briefly on the channel before when we were talking about the changes in wavelengths and frequencies used in British broadcasting a few months back, I think. And I mentioned this at the time and said we'd get back to it. So here we are. This is a Panasonic RF-1405. I think this is from the early 80s, reason being that it has markings on the dial reflecting stations on the frequencies that would have been allocated in the 1978 changes. Now, as I mentioned on that video, you can't actually see that very well because the perspex has got so clouded and scratched and things, including some deliberate scratches by people here. So because they can't see what station they were tuning into, they just found it and then put a big scratch on the perspex to make sure that they can find it again, which does not help really in terms of refurbishing this. This perspex here on this panel is also faded. Worse still, it appears that the missing link has also decided that his favourite stations can also be encoded forever by scratching them into the top panel as well. 3 counties medium wave we've got on there. That's a feature we don't have anymore, along with many other medium wave stations. I wondered actually if we can, maybe we can just scrub it out. I did a bit of pre-work here on the corner to see what happens if or was it that corner? No, it was this corner. I see what happens if I just use some 240 sandpaper on it. And it appears it doesn't come out too badly, so I'll get some 400 on that as well, and then see if I can put a bit of polish on or something, and maybe we can make that work out better. Obviously, there are problems where we've got logos on here, or legends and things, because I don't really want to rub those off. But that bit isn't too bad, but it's going to make it look slightly different. So yeah, it's a bit it's going to be an interesting one, this. Also, the telescopic aerial is missing, but again, in theory that should be easy enough to fix, but it's finding one with the right fitment is a bit of a problem. And the big one, which I don't really see an answer to, well, I've got an idea of what the answer to that might be, is that there's no cover for the battery compartment. I might also mention here, this is not the original tuning knob. This is one I got and added onto it because the tuning knob was missing from this when I got it. These knobs have been cleaned up because I was cleaning up some other radios knobs, and while I had the tub of soapy water, I thought I'd put those in as well. Being a Yorkshireman, you know, I like to reuse the bath water as much as possible. I'm thinking of trying to get the kids and the whippets in there later, but I'm not sure in which order. So given that this radio is, as Arthur Daly might have said, in a right 2 and 8, what's the attraction of it? Well, it's actually not bad, you know, once you get it going. Obviously, the batteries are a bit difficult to stay in at the moment, but it does have the option for mains power. So let's get some mains power into it and put it on FM.
She might have. She's only got 9 quid in it so far, but that is a lot. She started...
You know, I can remember a time when you used to have a proper, sensible voice to be allowed to broadcast on the radio. I don't know what's going on nowadays, really.
The door, squirrels, rubbins.
Activities we've done is bowling, we've done the pottery painting, the pedalers, done the electric boats.
It creates quality family time.
This is actually quite good sound quality on FM there. And bear in mind, I haven't even put anything on. We've still got this stub, but we've got no actual aerial on at the moment. So we can only get the really strong stations. If I put an aerial on, I can get a few more. There are some other interesting features on this. It's got these like toggle switches, which you've got 2-ended things, so they look like they're momentary, but you've got, you know, your on and off switch here. You've got a thing called battery saver, and I've had a look at the circuit, I've had a look at the instructions, and what it does is it actually reduces the quiescent current of the output amplifier. In terms of how that sounds, I can't really hear a lot of difference in it, and also these buttons are a little bit dodgy.
I just entered that competition again to win £3,000 of BP Me rewards points. So, you can... I didn't have to. It's with any purchase. And I purchased Jelly Babies. Huh?
What it seems to do is take away the sort of top and bottom ends, but I think the answer is it just reduces the actual output power of the thing. So, reducing the battery drain. Also, it's got this LED switch, so there are some LEDs here, which again, it's rather difficult to see what they do. But you've got basically a power on and off. You've got a battery indicator, whether it's good or not, and you've got a level indicator. I'm not sure what that's for really. I mean, it doesn't seem to light up until you get very high. And then this one here, which is a tuning indicator. Now again, the problem is that switch there is a bit intermittent, so that's something we can look at. The other controls don't seem too bad actually, and this LED display can be on or off, so again, it's another battery saving feature. This seems to be quite a big thing. They've actually labelled it in big letters here as a battery saver radio. It's a pity they didn't save the battery cover as well. That would be even better. Overall, I think it seems quite a solidly built thing, and I quite like it, and the sound of it, and the the quality of the sound, and the sturdiness of the controls like here, I just like. And I think it would be a shame to put it in the bin because some Neanderthal has attacked it with a Stanley knife. I think it has a future, Right, let's have a look at getting this apart. There seem to be 4 screws in the bottom here. Let's get those out. And then there's 2 rather deeper ones down here, I think. Does it come apart now is the next question. Or have I missed something? I think that possibly I haven't taken enough of that screw out. Yeah, that's the answer. So if those 2 screws, which are quite long as I said, come out, and the back comes off, and you can just about see what's there. So it's got some, this is actually quite nice, it's got connectors onto the board here. So you just have to remember which way those go. I mean, I'm taking a video, so obviously I can, so I've got blue, red, white here from the power supply. That's those, and there's another one here for the FM antenna, and that should free it. So that's the whole back off, including the mains transformer and rectifier there, and then we can see into the rest of the machine. And it looks a fairly reasonable construction really. It's a fairly big loudspeaker, which explains why it's got quite good sound. Transformer coupled audio, which again would contribute to that I think, and probably fairly rare in the 80s to have transformer coupled audio. By that time I think most radios had moved to using big electrolytics, which had something to, always to me, as a bit of compromise. That transformer looks a bit loose, but other than that, oh, and if you look here, this is an interesting one. The other side of the FM input, so you've got the aerial connector, which we took off, which goes onto the aerial mounted in the back of the case. And then this one produces like a ground plane here with the chassis, which a lot of sets omit to do, and that again is possibly a reason why it actually is quite good sensitivity even with the aerial missing. So we take the circuit board out, at which point we can see the tuning mechanism. We can get at these to clean them. I don't think they need much of a clean. I'll give them one anyway while they're out. So the LEDs are here. That'll be okay. The switches, I call them the LEDs because the switches seem to drive it. Actually, I'm talking about switches really. So the switch panel has got like a little, and that looks like that used to have a, whoops, that used to have another screw there, but it doesn't now, which suggests people have had this apart in the past. So let's have a look at that. Generally, this is not a bad set to work on, I think. You know, I've seen some absolute horrors in my time. And although this is certainly not wasting space, and it's quite tightly packed and has a lot of facilities, the quality of the wiring and things, and the ability to get at things to service them. See, that just lifts out there for that switch panel. I'm guessing that plastic bit is, you could take that off if you wanted to resell the things. But yeah, I can get at those switches there now, so I'll clean those as well. and hopefully that should improve things from that point of view, and we can start looking at the more mechanical things. Now here's something else. If you take some more screws out, this whole mechanism with the tuning scale and everything else, and all the, you don't have to pull apart all the drive cord and things. The whole thing just comes out as one assembly. That again, that's really good. That's really good quality engineering here, that they've actually thought about things. And then I can actually get at these pieces of perspex. Now I don't know if I can get them out, or if I can have a go at actually cleaning them. I'm guessing they're glued in quite solidly, really, so I might just have a go at taking all the wires out and then have a go at the case separately, I think.
From the Hillsborough Law Now campaign, it says, "We're extremely disappointed with the police's response today. The apology, while welcome, makes no reference to a change in legislation which would put an immediate to families battling against the state."
So whilst the work on this radio has very much been a case of the art of the possible, you can't really get anything like this in the state it was back to perfection. I think we've generally made some pretty solid improvements. I sanded down the... as I said, I sanded down these surfaces here with, first of all, 240 grit paper, and then 400, and then 1000. That's got them very... and also polished them up with a bit of metal polish. It's got them very shiny. The only slight problem I've got with that, well, first of all, it's a little bit too shiny now, so every time I touch it I leave fingerprints on it, so I'm now being a bit OCD about it. The only other issue is, as I said, I didn't really get rid of this, I didn't want to get rid of this legend here, so that's not perfect, but again, it's not bad. I actually managed to find a telescopic aerial in my collection which pretty much fitted perfectly without any adjustment to the case. I mean, it's actually a bit short, but I can make it fit into that holder there, so that's a bit of a rarity. That doesn't normally happen. That was pleasing. Yeah, the battery cover, obviously, no chance of getting another one of those, so I just stuck a piece of fairly hard cardboard in here to hold those in. It's good enough for moving it around the workshop. I wouldn't obviously use it, I wouldn't take it around outside the house with it, but it's okay, and you can still run it off the mains, so it's not a massive issue. What else? Yeah, I cleaned up these switches. These switches now work properly. We don't get the intermittent behaviour, so that's good. And I have to say, overall, it wasn't a bad set to work on. There are only about 2 or 3 different sizes of screws, and there's always a reason for them being different. It's quite easy to work out which screw goes where. You don't have this massive number of things that you have to keep making notes as to where each one went. The one thing I will say is that getting the main circuit board in and out was a bit of an art. Once you got the technique, which is that you have to get the 4 pots in there first, that has to be done first before you try and get any of the rest of it aligned. And if you, well, having done it several times, because I managed to break a few things in the process. Those little spade connectors which held the board, or held the wires onto the board, a very good idea, but they got a bit weak over the years, so I broke one of those, so I had to re-crimp all of those things, and then you always end up forgetting to put something back. So I've had the board in and out a few times, also managed to get the tuning misaligned. But having done that, I think overall I'm glad that we've saved it. I think sets like this shouldn't just be chucked in the bin because somebody's vandalised them. Obviously the perspex, I can't really get much more out of that than this. I've cleaned it up and polished it. I can't get the deep scratches out, and this stuff that seems to be internal to it I can't do much about. It would be nice if I could get a couple of new pieces of perspex, and I could try doing that. I can definitely cut a couple out that would fit in the holes, although I don't really like having to rip them out because it always ends up making a bit more of a mess. And I can actually see all the markings now, which means it's usable. I think it would have benefited a bit from illumination of the scale, actually. This would have been one with a scale illumination would have been nice, but that wouldn't have fitted in much with the battery saver, would it? And white LEDs weren't really a thing. Anyway, there we go. As you just heard, it's a really nice sounding set. It's got good sound on both FM and AM, and it's got potential to be used quite a lot, really. I think if you see one of these sets hopefully in a better state than this, I would certainly go for getting one as a keeper.